Till, welcome to the show.
Thanks so
Uh,
much.
I thought we might start. Like, obviously, people hear your voice all the time and see you on the live streams and the commentary. But let's delve a little bit more into you and your background first. Um, I remember when I first met you. It was in Stockholm. It was in December. It was freezing cold. It was snowing, and you'd been outside. I think you've been doing some breath work and some cold exposure work. And you'd said you'd had to overcome some health challenges and that had helped you. So I thought we might start there with that. Like, what were those health challenges, and do you still use that type of thing to help you?
Sure. That was cold, by the way. Absolutely. It
It
was
was so
so hard to find a spot outside that wasn't snow covered, so I could actually sit down and relax a little bit. But yeah, it worked out in the end. It's a combination of two things, really. I went through two different things in my life. I was your typical youngest of four, sunshine every day, coming out of every hole of your body. And then I started getting sick, and doctors just couldn't put their finger on it. So I was about 18, 19 when that started. And just like as soon as I moved, I started getting cold or something. And since they couldn't figure out what it was, they pumped me up with four different antibiotic sessions within a year, which we all know now isn't great. And then eventually it turned out that I had Epstein Barr, so glandular fever. And a little late. So at that point, my system was so run down that I ended up with 3 months in hospital quarantine because doctors basically said, one more cold and you're going to die. There's nothing we can do for you. And then it took me about 4 years from that to sort of kind of recover, to be able to do just a little bit of sports. But it went up and down in phases over the next 6 years. So overall, 10 years where I'd be able to go to the supermarket and feel great and come home, get out of the car, and have no energy to carry the shopping bags to the front door.
wow,
And so, no sports really possible. And I was very active as a kid. Did whatever sports I could get my fingers on, really. And then after 10 years, a doctor, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, told me that I'll never do endurance sports again because my system is broken. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And it's like, he's like, yeah, like your organs and so on, and we can't really help it anymore. And I was like, well, there's alcoholics who recover from like alcoholic liver and everything, and I've never abused my liver like that. Like I don't believe it. So I basically stopped seeing doctors and I went very, very anal and very boring on nutrition. Like I'd be the guy for the next 2 years who once a month would go out with friends, maybe to a restaurant, and then order the dressing on the side. I was like basically like a California girl. It's like, oh no, I'll just have to sell it, no dressing on the side, and that kind of thing. And I went through everything, no sugar, no cow protein because it's supposed to attack the digestive tract and everything. But after being shocked for a day after what doctor told me, I said, you're wrong, and I'll prove you by doing an Ironman. So 4 years later, I did Ironman South Africa, and things started escalating from there, to eventually what's now my passion, the ultra bikepacking races and adventures out there. And it started like being fairly good, but then I kept having those moments where I'm like, oh, it still feels like glandular fever. It's like it's coming back. So, but every time I went to do blood tests, doctors were like, no, it's just the antibodies. Until recently, a doctor found out, well, it is the antibodies, but it's 10 times the amount of what it should be. Basically, it's chronically in the system, which very unfortunately I didn't know when the COVID vaccinations made the rounds. And so they set me back brutally. I basically spent a month afterwards at home where my wife had to take care of me. I was unable to live. And haven't been able to race since, still building up since. So that's kind of what you've seen is the aftermath of that. So breathwork has helped a lot. And the reason is nowadays, that long COVID seems to be heavily connected, a connection between people who had glandular fever and then either contracted COVID or had the vaccination. But breathwork seems to be the key that kind of keeps me on track. So I'm still
okay,
working on it. I'm still doing it every day. I've added things to what you've seen, but I've raised a couple of HYROX since, so it's definitely getting a lot better.
amazing, amazing. What is Wim Hof the the sort of breath work that you follow?
Yeah, I think that's the common name, right? At the end of the day, Wim Hof learned from reading books and visiting people who did breath work already. But it's the basic. It's the hyperventilation followed by the breath hold. However, like I do different things. So this is the one that's kind of like it really helps me when I overdid it and I wake up and I realize the system is down. I wake up with a headache or something. I can literally get the headache away with that, get some energy in the body, feel like I can, keep going for the day and help the immune system fight back. But then for sports, I'm like, ever since I've gotten heavily into breathing and like reading up on it and everything. So the two other things I do now, the one is Breathe Light to Breathe Right by Patrick McGowan, an Irish fella. And the concept or the idea is basically we're not meant to be mouth breathing, and we're all hyperventilating all the time. And it teaches the body to, well, you force it to breathe in less and breathe in, less and more shallow in a way. So you still go into the stomach, but you don't fill it up all the way. And that works really well. And I'm now fortunate enough to have a intermittent hypoxic breathing machine at home. Because the funny thing is like the 2 times in the past 4 years that I felt the best was when I was doing mountain bike trips for weeks through high altitude. And turns out the high altitude training is amazing because at the end of the day, what I have as an aftermath of the vaccination is mitochondriopathy. So no energy support to the cells, and altitude helps a lot with that. So every once in a while, I'm lying on my couch with my mask and I'm doing the breathing and I'm reminding my wife, who's a fair bit younger than me, what it's going to be like when I start snoring and I need a breathing machine for just sleeping next to her.
Do you think it would help, like if someone hasn't had like the health issues that you've had? Do you think the breath work would help sporting performance?
Oh my
HYROX athletes?
So much. It's ridiculous. Especially the Breathe Light to Breathe Right is amazing. Patrick McGowan does another thing which is heavily based on what Emil Zatopek, one of the most accomplished German long distance runners, did way back. And that is a breath hold during training. And you do like 10 reps of that. And it's super cool. It's literally, you have easy training, but you take a deep exhale, so you're empty, and then you just go like whatever, you run 20 steps or you cycle for 10-15 seconds until the urge to breathe is really there, and you breathe in, and like with a delay of 3 to 4 seconds you can feel your legs just for a few seconds get real tired, like they're getting flushed with lactate or something. But to the day it made him one of the most accomplished long distance runners and that kind of training. But Emil Zatopek very unfortunately turned into a very interesting character after his career, which made it very easy to discredit everything he did. And that breathing was later picked up by what's to the day, as far as I know, the most decorated Olympic swim team in history, the US team. And the coach used the same methods for them. And then I think 3 universities did like a study on it and said it's all a hoax. Maybe it's a mental thing, but physically it doesn't work. And they completely basically discredited him and ruined his career, only to then years later find out, oh, they made a mistake with the studies. They did the training after a deep inhale instead of an exhale, which changes everything in the body, right? So I highly recommend for anybody doing sports to read Patrick McGowan, The Oxygen Advantage, and James Nestor, Breath. If you don't like reading, it's out there as a audiobook as well. And if you look at it, like no matter what sports you look into, if you look into the elite, you look at people who won the Ironman World Championship, who won the Olympics, they don't talk much about it, but there is a lot of breath work going on.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right. Amazing. And then, so your sporting side of things, you went and did that first Ironman.
Yes.
How was that?
It's quite funny. It was really sad for a couple of reasons. I was insanely focused so mid 2010, I realized, okay, I found a coach who understands what I have, who control me, because I was also wild. Like every time I want to blame it on the doctors not taking proper care of me, but the reality is I added into the whole mix by every time I felt good, I was just pounding it too hard. And so I found a coach who was really good to control me. And so mid 2010, I realized, okay, I might be able actually to find a way to get healthy and maybe actually pull that off with that Ironman. And it took another 3.5 years. But for those 3.5 years, I was crazy focused. I was just envisioning that finish line in every training session. And like I had a crash in between where I spent 5 days in the hospital, and you still see the pretty finger that's a left over and had like the shoulder wide open and everything. And I went out of the hospital and basically been the pain medication. I was on Lanzarote, and the next day I was back on the turbo for about 50 minutes until I started getting dizzy. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm going too fast here. But there was a lot of dedication for it there. And I had this amazing moment about 2 months out from the race where I was always like, for 3.5 years, I was like, if I do that Ironman, I'm proving to myself I'm healthy again. And about 2 months out from the race, I had that moment where like, hold on, I've been able to do all this training. I'm there already. Like the race isn't all that important anymore. And then I made the big mistake. I left South Africa and I went over to race at Ironman South Africa. And none of my friends had time to come, and I didn't have a partner at the time. So yeah, I went over and like crossed that finish line and was all by myself after all this focus and everything. I'm like, oh, this would be so much better to share. Yeah, raced a few more Ironman after that, and then got bored of it and jumped into 8-stage mountain bike racing, and then thought, oh, that is cool. And then got convinced by a friend to race one more Ironman. And I was riding around in circles in 2019, training for an Ironman. And I was like, what on earth am I doing here? Like, I'm riding around in circles. This is so stupid. I got 6 weeks off. I could cycle. I was living in the north of Spain. I could cycle to Morocco in that time, do a cool bikepacking trip. And like I've done a few before, but like also like easy, like sleeping indoors and everything. And I grew up very spoiled, protected middle class in the Black Forest in Germany. So I wanted to know how spoiled I was. Like, can I go to Africa and just live in the dirt and see what happens and kind of deal with the poverty and everything? And by the time I came home from that ride, I decided it would be way cooler to not cycle to Africa, but to fly to Africa and just cycle through it. And so 2 weeks later, I found myself on a borrowed bike and some bags that I bought in Agadir, Morocco, and ended up cycling 3,500 kilometers through Morocco, West Sahara, crossing the biggest minefield in the world, into Mauritania, getting held hostage for a ransom that I had to pay myself in Senegal, and ended up down in Gambia. And very fortunately, that now it's January 2020, and very fortunately, I had a job in Munich I had to fly back for. And it was like, oh, I'll fly back for that job, and then I'm going back to Gambia, and I'm going to cycle all the way to Cape Town. And I literally made it out of there 3 days before they locked the world down.
Wow. Before you were stuck in Gambia for months.
I met couples down there, or one couple, and they got stuck because they weren't flying out, and that's it. They were stuck for the next 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah. Got lucky there.
Tell us the story about getting held hostage. I can't let that just fly.
So I'm not a smart person, which I blame on my dad. I'm growing up hiking with my dad, and it literally went like, oh, look, there is a do not enter sign. We got to see what's in there, right? Or, oh, look, we want to go this way, but there's a path. I've never been down this path, and it looks really pretty. Let's go there. And again and again and again, like at nightfall, we had to be rescued off the mountain by my mom. And that stuck forever. So I was going through Senegal, and I took a wrong turn, and there's nothing in my brain that says, let's turn around. You're in the middle of the desert. There's only sand ahead of you. Let's turn around and get on the original track. Now, in my head, it's like, it's got to be something if you go straight, right? Somehow you got to get out of there. So it was the third day in a row. I was going 200 plus kilometers, so like 140-ish plus miles. And I ended up pushing through the desert and everything. And by 10 o'clock at night, I came to a town. It was the first time over there at all. It's like, it was on the main trucking route between Senegal and Gambia. It was the first time I was like, I don't know if I feel 100% safe sleeping outdoors. So there was this police compound, nicely fenced, huge yards and everything. So I went in there. It's like, hey, can I pitch my tent here? And they're like, we do you one better. We got this fella who can help you out. And so he was basically instigated by the police. So he picked me up. I had to follow him. He went, like, hopped in a car, and then I had to follow him to this compound. And so by the time we got to the compound, go in, huge steel door behind me gets shut, and he basically put me in his one place, and he's like, all right, now you got to pay up. And then it wasn't enough for what he wanted to have. And the cash machines are locked in Africa inside the banks at night. So he's like, you're to stay here until I pick you up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Then we go to the bank, and you can pay me the rest. And yeah, basically one of the sentences was like, and don't try to get out of here. It's going to be dangerous for you. I'll never forget that sentence. So they didn't give me food. They didn't give me water. So I'd been on the bike since 6 o'clock in the morning. It is now 11 p.m. I hadn't had lunch because I got lost. They didn't allow me dinner or anything. I felt my body shutting down completely, but I knew I had to do something to get out of here. But it was kind of like a really cool experience, because despite being completely broken, I knew, okay, I got to set everything up for an escape attempt in the morning. And the only thing that can help me here is I have to sleep. So there was no, I never felt scared for my life. I got to say that. I always felt like they want money, but still it wasn't not great, right? So he's like, okay, I can't be scared. I can't be nervous or anything. I need to sleep. And it's amazing. The brain was like, okay, sleep. And I had those feverish night sweats and so on. The body was done. But with sunlight, because before my bike lights and everything had been stolen. So by sunlight, I got up and found like a crowbar, and oh fuck, everything is quiet and silent right in this compound. And I just went to that big lock that they had hanging on the steel gate, and it just went kaboom. The thing basically exploded open. Like, oh. So I just took my bike and hauled ass, and for the next, I don't know, 20 kilometers, I was like riding real hard with whatever energy was left in the body. Thought was like, they know there's only two directions you can go from here. If they want to be serious, they can find me. So by then I hadn't had food or drinks or anything for 24 hours. And I had no money left at all. And I had about 2 zips of Coca-Cola and maybe half a bottle of water left. And I had 80 miles, so 120 kilometers into the most brutal headwind on one of the busiest trucking routes in Africa to get to the next big city where I could actually get cash.
Wow.
And I went in 3.5 mile steps in my head. I'm like, and it's like every time I was like, I cannot turn this pedal, but I have to. I have no choice. I'm in the middle of the desert now between 2 cities. There is nothing I can do. And there's trucks honking from behind. And if you didn't go off the road, they wouldn't like properly go around. They will put out to the side and then just shove you off the road and everything. It was carnage. And then the most beautiful thing happened. I got to the city after struggling for hours and hours and hours and thinking in like 3.5 mile intervals. And I'm like, I went to get cash. I went to a gas station. I loaded up on sugar and everything. And I thought, like, obviously I'd stay here and recover. But then my head went to like, okay, the sugar is kicking in. If I go another 10 miles, I'm outside the city. I can sleep somewhere there. So, and the road turned and the heavy headwinds were like sort of slightly pushing sidewind. So I did the 10 miles and it's like, oh, if I look at the map, it's like if I go another 10 miles, it suddenly starts getting green. And I hadn't seen green all of Mauritania and Senegal. It's like, I'll go there. And then by the time it's like green gave me this mental push and like, oh, I'll just keep rolling a little bit. And then I got to that point eventually where I'm like, I could find sleep. I'm really tired. But if I go another 20 miles, I'd be at the border to Gambia. And then so I went to the border of Gambia. And then I was like, hey, you know what? If I go another 20 miles, I'll get to the ferry. And from there, it's just another 10 miles left. And late at night, I could get to the spot where this trip ends. And I wouldn't have to ride the next day. And I'd be at the ocean and at the palm trees and everything. And so again, on that day, somehow I ended up doing 140, 150 miles on a completely broken body just because something kicked in, motivation kicked in. And that's been an incredible experience that helped me with every sport that reminder that after every low, there's a high. You just got to get through it.
Yeah. Love that. Wow, what a story. And
Yeah, it was
that's
wild.
also like the compartmentalization, I guess, if you like, or breaking down something into stages. You're like, just 10 more miles, just 10 more miles, just 10 more miles.
I
And
have this very, very fortunate ability without thinking about it that I have a very quick solution to things, and my head is 100% convinced this is the right solution. So I stop thinking about alternatives or whatsoever. I just go for this thing, which has helped me a lot. It's maybe not always the best solution, but in my head it is. So who cares?
Awesome. All right, let's just talk a little bit about the professional side of what you do. So
Yeah.
Obviously you're into sports presenting. How did you get into that?
I always wanted to be a presenter as a teenager for all the wrong reasons. I mean, I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I was the kind of kid who would like make a big ceremony out of my parents walking down the stairs when they were dressed up and going out at night. I remember one instance there, and I did like the local festivities. Then I did our what's the abitur, the big dance, the prom. I did the prom and everything. And I always wanted to do that, but I grew up on that end. I grew up conservative, so my dad was like, "Boy, you got to learn a proper job." So I went into hotels, but never lost the love for the commentary really and the announcing, and was fortunate enough to work first in Berlin for the 4 seasons, and later live in LA and work a lot with the film festivals and actors and everything. So that connection to entertainment was always there. So I started doing my trainings over there. And with all the Hollywood connections, they're like, oh, I'm going to go back to Germany when my visa runs out. I'm going to do red carpet premieres, try to get into television there and so on, because they're televised in Germany, and talk to a manager who was doing that with somebody already. And while we were chatting, basically, I got a call from a friend who was producing the merchandise for a triathlon in Spain. And he was like, hey, they need somebody who's done a triathlon. And I've done 2 short ones since, and who speaks English and feels comfortable emceeing. You want to do that? And I did it. And then another race organizer was there and was like, hey, you want to do my race as well? And then one of the biggest races in the world, the organizers were there and they were like, hey, you want to do our race? And it snowballed from there. And like by the end of the year, without thinking about it, I'd done 8 races. And it's kind of like when I was like, oh, wait, hold on. I might find a career in this. And yeah, that's how it started. And that's 16 years ago.
Do you find that like you just stepped into those things quite easily, quite comfortably? It sounds like. Do you feel the need to be crazy prepared for something, or are you happy quite? Just
so that's the greatest thing. There is a German entertainer. He's probably the most known German entertainer. He was on television, and he once said, "Entertainment to him is not being prepared." I don't really agree with it. I like being prepared. I hate scripted stuff. Don't get me wrong. Like I want to be spontaneous and everything, but I want to have the background information if somehow possible to be spontaneous. And when I got into those first triathlons, they were like, I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know the sport. I didn't know the business or anything. So I didn't know there was maybe 3 or 4 guys doing all the main races worldwide. And I'm going to get into so much trouble for saying that if they hear that, but they were lazy. They were happy to be amongst themselves, and they didn't do homework anymore. And they just relied on the information they had from being former professionals and stuff like that. And so without realizing it, by simply doing homework, I managed to stand out in a way and put a fresh face to it. And that's how it worked very quickly. And then the other thing is obviously you just got to go for it, right? So I was asked to, through an athlete, her husband was putting on an independent live stream for an Ironman license race on Lanzarote. So they were like, oh, we used the intern last year, but he blew his vocal cords. Like, do you want to MC the race? I'm like, sure. So I MC'd the race and I got good feedback. And with that, at the Triathlon Awards in Germany in winter, I just went to the Ironman Germany boss and was like, hey, Kai, you don't know me, but I'm Till and I've just MC'd an Ironman and I think I was really good. I should do more races. And he started laughing. He was like, give me a call in March. And so I gave him a call in March and he gave me a spot on the run course at the Ironman European Championship in Frankfurt for one of the sponsors. And after the race, he came up and got good news and I got bad news for you. Good news is the sponsor wants you again next year. And bad news is I don't. I want you at the finish line, and I want you at the finish line for my next race next month already. And that's how I started. Yeah. So sometimes
Nice.
you got to go for it.
Yeah. So there's that. I guess that leads nicely to the next question about you do like the MC work and finish line at HYROX as well. Like obviously there's the commentary, but you do also MC. Have you got any favorite moments from doing that?
Yes. Well, I have favorite moments pretty much in every race. So I think really favorite moments in this race are usually fastest and slowest athletes. To be honest, like obviously, I'm every race is great, but to see the elite battle it out and so on, that is a lot of fun because you have 15 people to focus on. You know exactly what's happening and so on. It's not 6,000 people coming through. It's 15 you keep your eyes on, and it's action and it's a duel and everything. And you can't follow this the same quite in the age group racing, right? But then in the age group racing, when it comes to the ones who got inspired by HYROX, for example, the ones who would usually be out bowling on a Saturday night or something, and suddenly they meet with friends and they do this and they're completely underprepared, but they're laughing and smiling all the way through, and you see that celebration at the finish line. That is amazing.
What do you see as your job as an MC? Is it like the hype? Is it the motivation? Is it adding to the atmosphere?
We got a really, really good setup with HYROX, I think. And so, obviously everybody in the UK knows Faisal by now, our man on the ground there and for a lot of the international races. And he's this crazy hype man, right? Mm-hmm. So for me is like, I'm a little bit hype man, but not on a Faisal style. But therefore, I'm a lot into the information as well. I'm a lot into like combining it. So letting the top athletes know where they are in their age group, letting spectators know that there is an actual race within the race happening and so on, but also celebrate the athletes and hype them on and cheer them on and everything. So it's a bit of a combination there. So that's what we got. I think we got a great setup. We've got full gas hype men like Faisal, and then we've got folks like me who follow the data and everything and inform as well. So it's a combination for me.
Yeah. You've like you do some work for Ironman in triathlon, mountain biking, HYROX. Like where do you see HYROX like sitting in the endurance landscape, and then also like how do you see the future for HYROX? Do you think can you like obviously it's that crazy growth?
I can say that very simple. I'm driving to Ironman Frankfurt today. And when I get there, I just want to have that in-person conversation. I'm letting them know that's my last season with Ironman, that I'm not continuing. And I've just signed on to more HYROX races. So I think that explains where I see the future of HYROX going. Yeah. It's not just that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've done Ironman races. I've done triathlon since 2010. So I'll still do some triathlon races. But I've done Ironman since 2012 as a series. When I got into it, I thought, I looked at other MCs and I'm like, you've got a lifespan of 5 years. If you're really good, maybe 10 years, but then people got to get bored of you. And so now it's my 14th season with it. And I'm like, I need a bit of a change.
Yeah. It must be quite different to commentate on as well, like a long Ironman race compared to like a 60-minute elite HYROX race.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, that for sure. It's not bad. Like the live stream and everything for the pro race, they're still fun in their own way, and we'll find a way to talk a lot about it. You work a lot more with data around the athletes and so on because you got a lot more time to fill. But in terms of the age group race, and it's fairly similar. At the end of the day, you're there to make sure that the athlete who crosses the line in the later stages, at some point, there isn't much to inform the spectators about. So your job is to hype the crowds to create a great atmosphere for the athletes to cross the line and make it a memorable moment for them. And at the same time, be there for the athlete to even elevate that moment, which can be quite easy. It's quite funny. Like a thing as simple as mirroring their reaction when they come down the finish line can be enough. So if they go like this and you stand in front of them and you go like this, they lose it. They go crazy. Sometimes it's that's enough.
Amazing. Let's talk about like the season that we've just had in HYROX, and obviously you and I have been to a lot of places, been to like Glasgow, Hong Kong, Vegas, Amsterdam, and you've been to a lot more as MC as well. But have there been any personal highlights or anything that stands out to you from this past season?
Oh man, there has been races that stood out. There has been performances that stood out for sure, without a doubt. I mean, in terms of races, I really, really enjoyed Vegas and Washington for the simple reason to see how insanely the US market has exploded, improved, the sport's grown, the events have got more glamorous, more entertaining within just a year. Mm-hmm. It is madness. I mean, US is going through the roof right now. So, yeah, definitely those were two events that stood out. Obviously, the World Championship delivered, in my opinion. I mean, we've seen so much race and so much drama on the track, off the track, and so on. We've seen surprises. We've seen people where you kind of had to have them on the radar, but they really, really made it happen and everything. It was really, really exciting. So that's definitely one that stood out as well. But yeah, so many.
At the World Championships, I guess, like the winners, with Tim and Linda winning, and I know you're good friends with Linda, especially, right? Because that, I mean, it wasn't a crazy surprise, but it was the results weren't necessarily, they weren't the favourites for those races. Could you have expected those wins? Like you know them better than a lot of people. Could you have expected that?
No. Simple no. I had Linda pegged for a podium. I saw that happening. The win before the race, no. But then you remember our conversation pretty much after the first run when she showed confidence and she stayed up there with Lauren and everybody, which we hadn't seen in the entire season, basically. It's like there was a different kind of Linda. There was confidence we hadn't seen before. There was a sense of belonging into that top group and everything. And I remember I was having a quick chat about that in the first or second run, that could mean trouble for the other girls. Still at that point, I would not have said, okay, here, $100 in, this is going to be the world champion title. But for me, the decisive moment of the race was the burpees. So when Joanna Wittrich went crazy on the first lane and a half of the burpees, like pulling away, and Linda stayed composed and actually left the burpees before Joanna, it was like, okay, something's happening. With Tim, we always knew he had the potential, right? The main reason I did not have him packed for the first was actually James Kelly. I really thought James Kelly might be on another level in the race. We've all, or most of you now, have seen, if you follow him, his analysis of what happened, that he just got carried away and went in too hard, which, in all fairness, I believe is because partially Tim made him, with the pace that he set. So I would say not expected for either of them, maybe a little more surprising even for Linda than it was for Tim.
Have you know, we've talked before in races about Linda's like mindset, and does she have the confidence to race and put herself like in those positions? Have you noticed a change in her at all that made you think like that she is now of that mindset that she can go into these races and win?
I did not see it before the race. I literally saw it with the way she ran and he carried herself in the race. And then Linda has two types of smile. And I think everybody watch the live stream has seen the second kind of smile, possibly for the first time for them. It's been there before, but not very often. It's not the I'm enjoying and thanks for cheering me on. It's the I'm enjoying this and everybody else is in trouble smile. And that was there a lot. There is this moment where Faisal is hyping her on and her response to it and so on. So there's definitely been a shift in confidence. I think it's ever so more now. But the trouble with Linda has always been that she's too kind. She's too nice. Like I remember literally Washington a year and a half ago. I went to her and I said, Linda, If you cannot find the competitor within you, like in the race, if you cannot find that, you're not friends on the track. You know, you need to find a way to be willing to beat the other women, to hurt them. And if you cannot pull it off, you got to go to that start line and you got to think, hold on, Lauren and Megan, they're torturing puppies. They cannot do that. I'm going to show them. And that's literally what I said to her there. To kind of like, you gotta find that image to be angry out there and, you know, let your potential out. And it's been great to see her do that at the World Championship without Lauren and Megan actually having to torture puppies. So next racing, yeah.
Is there anything that you think, like, you spent a lot of time around the elite athletes, like in this sport and other sports? Is there anything that you think people maybe don't appreciate about them, whether that's, I don't know, their mindset, how they are with each other, their preparation, anything like that? Anything spring to mind?
Oh, you open something here. Yes, I do believe there are things that people don't appreciate. The first thing is, they always say they are pro athletes. They're working out, they're doing sports, you know, they're going to cool places, but they train day in and day out. And I think people forget that they train when they don't want to, because they have to. Otherwise, they're not where they are. That is the first thing. And everybody, like, thinking about it, I don't know a lot of age group athletes who get a training plan and commit to it 100% for an entire year, not for 2 weeks, not for 4 weeks, not for 6 years, for an entire year. There is the commitment. The second thing is, it's the different level of focus that I think is undervalued or underappreciated. I remember for the first time in Girona, I was living in Girona, Spain, and Jan Frodeno, Ironman Olympic and world, or triathlon Olympic and champion and Ironman world champion. He was living up there as well. And the first time I went to his house, I was bringing something up, and his wife opened the door and she said, "He's in the pain cave on the turbo. Good luck." And I opened the door and I looked in his face, and it wasn't that he was looking angry at me or anything. It was a level of focus that you could see and feel that I'd never seen live before, that made me just say, "I'll be back tomorrow." And I shut the door and I left. And that is something you find in there, which brings me to the third point, which brings me to Hunter McIntyre.
I nearly interrupted you there and said, that actually reminds me of Hunter. So go on.
I'll tell you something, and I know this is not going to be the most popular opinion out there. Stop giving Hunter grief for a body check in Jeremy. That is my opinion. I really, really dislike it that people are sitting on their high horses and they expect perfection from elite athletes. We're sitting there. I mean, like, after that world championship, there is now the HYROX insiders having their podcasts and everything. And like, they're sitting there with sad faces, like somebody slaughtered the puppy, and go like, "We're so disappointed. Like, we cannot believe it. He's a role model," and everything. And he is, and he still is. But the thing is, we expect elite athletes that we want to identify with to push themselves to the absolute limit. You only do that if you're a possessed person. If you're not possessed enough, you're not making it to the point where you can be world champion. That is my opinion. And meaning that you're training and living on that edge. Sometimes you just escalate a little too much. And I think it needs to be okay. Not too crazy. I'm not talking beating somebody up or something. But Jeremy, and he knows that, he provoked Hunter at least 3 times. You only see it once on the live stream if you look closely. And Jeremy, I love you, man, but don't give me that crap of like, "Oh, I just went for the shortest line." You did not. And you did not have to cut in like that. And you knew who to provoke out there. And Hunter went for it. And the body check looks a little worse than it really is, because he catches Jeremy as both feet are in the air. And they both hugged it out afterwards and everything. Honestly, hey, this happens in sport. That's my opinion. I hate it that we just go crazy about it afterwards. Like, "Oh, he's a bad human being. He's not a good role model." He's doing so much for the sport. And if we expect them to go to the absolute limit, we also got to allow them to fail every once in a while, and it's got to be okay. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that is not appreciated enough is how much they sacrifice, how much they put in there, how much pressure they have, and that sometimes the pressure comes out the wrong way.
Yeah, when you said about Frodeno, it made me think of Hunter in Stockholm. Actually, the first race that we did together, and he broke the world record. And he'd spoken to me on here before about. I asked him about his like mindset in a race, and I can't remember exactly how he put it, but there's a level of like disconnection. He's just like he gets into it, and then he's like, and then he said, and then I'm gone. And then he said, and next thing I know, I've broken the world record, like type thing. It's just like this disconnection. And then I remember he broke the world record in Stockholm, and we were on the stage, and like you looked into his eyes, and it was like he wasn't there. It was like he came up, and like we sort of congratulated him, and I did feel like there was this level of disconnection. This like wasn't completely Hunter like you see in day-to-day life. You'd gone to this like place, if you like, for the race. Yeah. And no, I think
completely. And you know that's what it is. In the race, you're an athlete who's racing hard, and I know people love saying they're in the public eye and they need to be role models, but they are in so many ways and so on. And so don't give me that. Don't sit on your high horse. You know, it's like I tell you things that are way worse. If you're being a dad out there and you don't quit smoking when you got children and you smoke in front of them, you're way worse than body checking Jeremy for a little bit in a race. And you know, things like that. So look at yourself, and we're humans. We're built to make mistakes. That's how we learn, and we forgive mistakes if we learn from them. And that, in my opinion, that's just what it is. And I will stay a Hunter McIntyre fan. He's great for the sport.
I should say, well, maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't think you're saying that you disagree with them being disqualified.
Now that's an interesting one. That's a very interesting one. That's above my pay grade, but I think a nice solution would have been to take his prize money and leave the team with the title, because I don't think it impacted Ireland's race enough to where they are. Ireland was not in contention for the top spot in the end. And I think it's a tough call to punish the entire team like that. It's really tough for the other three. But I think it's also a very, very difficult decision that's proven by the fact that it took him until the next day to actually make a call. Because, again, people are saying, oh, you could have done this, you could have done that. But that decision that's being made there is what's going to be set the precedent for every instance to come in the future where we got a scenario like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Age group racing, especially, like, I can imagine if they didn't do anything, for example, like what do people think they can get away with at your average age group racing?
And it's really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what the response is, because the founders of HYROX, they come from short distance triathlon racing, and short distance triathlon racing has been amazing about, you know, things going wrong, learning from it, and actually installing more and more cameras, always at the spots where like, oh, we didn't think about that. But this is like a spot prior to where something might happen, and they start building cameras or put cameras there to like be sure they film proof or something. Which again, by the way, also brings me to the sport to the point of like, guys, it's a grown sport. You know, those decisions are what defines the sport, but you cannot foresee everything. So don't go out now and say like, oh, there should have been a rule for exactly that scenario. Every sport goes through a learning curve, and they learn from the things that happen in the sport, and it changes the rules, and it makes the sport more professional.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an amazing thing to be part of the sport in a time while it is growing, while maybe mistakes are being made, but while things are being learned. I think it's super cool to be part of the sport in this time already.
Yeah, agree. Having been around the sport, emceeing, like knowing what you see in some of the top elite athletes, is there anyone you're looking at as a future potential world champion, for example?
Ooh, oh wow, there are some out there. I'll start it with saying, and I said this in Chicago, this sport is gonna change in the next couple of years. This sport's gonna get fast. It's going to get even more professional. And you will only see very few of the elite athletes that we're seeing now be on top of their game on top of the sport in 2 years. For the simple reason that it's become such a popular sport now that the youngsters train specifically for that. This will be their first proper sport. They will be HYROX athletes from the get-go. They're not CrossFit athletes coming into HYROX. They're not triathletes coming into HYROX. They know specifically what to do with this. And this sport is going to be like every other sport. It's going to be, we still have elite 15 athletes who do a lot of things, but they don't do everything to be on top of the game. And you'll have to get to that point where you do everything, where you get a mental coach, you start building a team around you. You make sure you travel with a team that you do nothing but race on race day. Everybody else is taking care of everything else. And I'm convinced this is where we're going. And then you look at some of the potential. I mean, everybody's been buzzing and talking about Lucy Proctor on the women's side. But we got to look at Sinead, not just as a potential world champion if she progresses like that, but also as one of the future rock stars of the sport. Because if she can keep up that sort of light feeling that she brings across and everything, and being a little bit unique with her slightly less hand strength, but therefore intermediate sprints at the farmer's carry and so on, that entertained the crowds like crazy in Chicago. She's a character. She's got the looks and everything. She's charming. I said it after Barcelona at the Last Chance qualifier. Like, if I was a manager in the sport, I'd get on that train. And I think she's got one now, and I hope they make happen, great things happen for her. I really want to see what Charlie Botterill can do when he stops racing 4 races a weekend, or 5 if he can. I think it's going to be amazing. And I know I was joking a little bit teasingly on the live stream about him, but I love guys like that. I love guys who go out and say, like, I'm going to smash it. And it's okay if they don't, because the next race, they're going to say it again, and they'll be 10% closer. And that's how they go. Sebastian Kienle in long distance triathlon was exactly like that. And then at the end, he was Ironman world champion, multiple 70.3 world champion and so on. And so Charlie, I hope he keeps up that spirit. I hope he keeps up that confidence. And I really want to see where he's going, without a doubt. So there's a lot of athletes coming up in the elite. You've got the doubles. There will be double specialists. We're seeing that already. You look at the Van der Lindeloof sisters and so on. They're proving the point. It's just like tennis and so on. You can be amazing at the doubles, even though you're not the best elite, individual athlete and so on. And I think there's going to be a lot of faces we haven't even recognized yet. I think Fabian Eisenlauer is so driven and so determined on the German side that he has real potential at a podium spot at a world championship and so on. But then on the other hand, I will never write off a Tim Vanish, a James Kelly, a Hunter McIntyre until they're retired, because they got their mindset and they got the drive and everything. So
yeah.
But I'll tell you something. I'll tell you one thing. For me, I thought about it. It was like, I wasn't sure if the question is going to come up or not. But if you asked me about the performance of the year, I'm giving this prize to Sean Noble. I'm going to your first major, injuring yourself like that, coming back way faster than anybody predicted. Theoretically, almost at least believing you're qualified for the world championship. Then you're being dropped out because of a protest. And, you take your well-deserved break. Again, he got a lot of heat for that, for stepping away from the sport in a way, and stepping away from healthy food and not drinking and gaining some pounds. But the moment he was called in for the Irish team, was like, all right, I got to do my country proud. And he stopped having those drinks in the evening, and he stopped eating shite, and he started training again, and he was there for the team at the World Championship. I give this man a lot of credit for this season.
Yeah. And when it all comes together, like, I can see him doing something next season, certainly. I saw he run a 32 something 10K the other day, actually, which would put him towards the top of the Elite 15 in 10K times. And he's, pretty tough guy. It's not like he's weak on the stations. So So
And
yeah.
honestly, I don't care what you do in winter. People are bashing him for like, oh, he didn't live like an athlete. He ate wrong. He drank wrong. If that is what keeps his mind in check, if
Mhm.
that is what relaxes him, I don't care what he does, as long
Yeah.
as he's fit to represent himself and his country when the season starts.
Yeah. You talked about, until Tim retires, like you'll bet on him. But I realised the other day he's actually only 26. He was the second youngest in that field, so could be quite a few years before he needs to retire.
Oh man, and it's watch out. Like he's changing.
Mm.
He is getting his lack of control, to be harsh, under control. It's like he missed 2 world championships. He's trying to train very hard and maybe just a little too much at times. And it's hard for him not to train. And he presented himself so controlled, so well at the world championship throughout the races. I mean, yeah, he did get angry when Yannick got the second red card at the burpees and the doubles, but still they pulled it off together. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more from him.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you. I could talk to you all day, to be fair.
Thank you.
Just one last quick question.
Go for it. I know I gave you a little bit of a time limit, but plus or minus 10 minutes, that's all good.
Okay. All right. So we've had a few co-commentators this year. We've had Megan join us, Jake Williamson, Jake Dearden. But if you could have any one person, dead or alive, next season join us, who would it be?
Any one person, dead or alive, doesn't have to be a HYROX person.
No, yeah, it doesn't have to be a HYROX person.
That is a really good question. I feel like in the instances when Hunter body checks Jeremy, the Dalai Lama might be great to have on a live calm everybody down. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there's always great people out there where I thought it would be cool to have them, but I think we've got an amazing team, and I think Megan has shown incredible natural talent at the commentary. I mean, if you watch that, I don't know any other elite athlete who manages to integrate that well into a live stream, not talk about themselves unless asked, be so positive about everybody who's racing out there and so on, and be so on point. We had her in there, and do you realize that we had to change nothing? So you're used to me not asking questions. You hear in my tone that this was meant as a question that I was building up, and you'll answer. And she had the same natural feel that you had if it was meant for her or for you. There was not one scenario where it wasn't clear who was supposed to answer the thing that I built up. And I think that's amazing. That's why I would not trade her in. I would keep her.
Yeah, it's fair. It's very, very easy, very natural, isn't it? And we said after the Worlds, that was like one of the most like sort of natural flows that we've had in the commentary booth. So yeah.
Otherwise, if not her, I want to have Will Ferrell in there. I think that would make for great comedy, race and HYROX.
It would,
especially without explaining the sport to him before. I think that would be a great one. Maybe the UFC team can make that happen.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for this. If people want to follow you, find out more about you, where should they go to?
I think it's Instagram is the best. That's where the everyday is happening, from the adventures to the commentary and everything. So that's Schenk Life. Very simple. On Instagram, I'm sticking to one account. I'm too busy for more accounts, and I'm also too old and not cool enough for TikTok and stuff like that. So that's where you find me on Instagram.
Okay. All right. Amazing. Thank you, mate. And talk to you again soon.
Thanks for taking the time.